Welcome to Stack and Strength. I'm your host, John, and today I'm joined by Finn, founder of Bitcoin Success School. Finn helps Bitcoiners learn how to set up self custody securely so they can feel confident, protected, and prepared for the long term. As you know, on Stack and Strength, we talk a lot about building physical strength and financial sovereignty. And today's conversation is about one of the most important parts of Bitcoin ownership, not just about stacking sats, but also protecting them properly. So, Finn, thank you so much for taking a time out. We just got to know backstage that you just came off another podcast. So thanks for that. Busy times. Finn, before we get into all that self-custody, right? I just want to know, for your viewers or listeners who don't know about you, tell something about yourself. What was the moment that made Bitcoin really click for you? What problem were you trying to solve when you first got into Bitcoin, etc.?
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more it's become apparent that most people find Bitcoin due to some kind of pain in their life. And for me, that was physical pain. So I wanted to play professional rugby my whole life and was still probably chasing the dream when it was gone. But I ruptured my ACL, MCL, tore my meniscus. And that was really the nail in the coffin that dream has passed. So I went through a party phase, don't get me wrong. I'd never partied or did anything up to that point because it was rugby, and then suddenly I had nothing. So I just moved into a house of rugby lads and kind of partied the pain away, I guess. And then after some time, realized I need to kind of sort my life out. Rugby's not going to be that thing that I thought it was. And it had always been kind of a way for me to avoid the traditional path of study hard, go to university, get a degree, get on the property ladder. That never made sense. I just didn't know what else. So I used rugby as that vehicle. So when I had that pain and I had to kind of reassess everything, I joined an online coaching community to help other people through rehab after I had 2 surgeries, and the second time was much smoother. And through that community, I found a wealth coach based in Australia, funny enough, and he kind of laid out Bitcoin in a way that just made sense to me. And the analogy was, if you were going to go to the races and bet on a horse, you wouldn't just bet on a random horse. You would study the form card and pick the fastest horse. And as he's saying this on the presentation he's got up are the CAGRs, the compound annual growth rate of the top 10 performing assets in the last 10 years. And there was Bitcoin at the front, miles ahead of everything else. So that piqued my interest. And then a month later, a guy in the same community launched a course called Take the Cry Out of Crypto. And I still didn't know what Bitcoin was at this point beyond a cryptocurrency. So I thought the course was on trading and how to get rich quick. So I was like, this is it. I need it. And fortunately, it was the complete opposite of that, hence the name. But my takings from it were there's Bitcoin and there's cryptocurrency, and they're 2 fundamentally very different things. But regardless of what you do, you self-custody and you don't get hacked and scammed. So that was my kind of entrance into Bitcoin as number go up to start with. And then once I started straight away diving down the self-custody route, I realized it was much more than just a number go up technology, and it was a revolution that could change the world, which I still believe today. So absolutely blessed that was my entry into the Bitcoin world. I managed to dodge all of the shit coins and go straight into the security. The biggest curse was that I thought that was everyone's journey into Bitcoin, that you self-custody and that you're secure. So it was only when I started then actively posting about Bitcoin, because I felt within me that was going to explode because there was no one to talk to in my world, that people started reaching out. And then I realized that 99% of people are just one step away from getting destroyed and losing everything because they're set up. They have no setup, or their setup's fragile. So that's kind of a short overview into my journey, I guess.
Yeah, and pretty much kind of if you talk to other fellow Bitcoiners, you realize that probably everyone has the similar story, if not exact story. Most people come for the number go up, stay for the tech, stay for the revolution, all that. But then many delve into the shitcoin because I hate to admit I was one of them, and the first thing I ever bought was Bitcoin, and that was in 2020, where it was around 12K. And then, as you said, didn't have much idea about it, just knew, okay, it's something. And then went on to other stuff. I did I did do well there, but eventually realized that everything else is a scam. If not today or tomorrow, they will crash and crumble and you will lose your money. My journey into self custody is something like that, right? I self custody very early on in my journey, but there were moments where I had relied on others' custody. So, for example, I had funds in BlockFi, Celsius, FTX. You know what happened there, right? All of them collapsed. Celsius stole our money. BlockFi stole, and then I was managed to get a lot of my funds out, but still, I did end up, a lot of funds got stuck there, and that's when it was so, pertinent to me that self custody is key, right? You cannot rely on anyone else except yourself, right? Exactly as what I talk to people from the fitness community, that nobody else is going to do this for you, right? You are the one who's going to take that step. You're a player. You've been in the sports arena yourself. Nobody else is going to do that early morning training. You are going to do that yourself. Nobody else is going to do that reps for you. You can think you want to achieve this particular physique or particular frame, whatever you want to, but it's not going to come to you. It's going to take time. You have to be ready for that long term mindset. No shortcuts, no fat diets, nothing works. If you want to have something sustainable, it will take time. All good things will take time, and so is this, right? Nobody else is going to do self custody for you. You are, and that's what it's really wonderful that what you're doing, and what I also try to tell people and friends and community around that. Yes, it's good that you've got your foray into it. You've opened an account, now you're buying sats of this exchange, but it's still on that exchange. You really don't have that. You may log into your account like your bank account, look at the app. Oh, yep, I see it. But one day you will not be able to log into that app. It will just not let you log in. So what's going to happen? Your funds are frozen. They've taken your funds. Why? Because it was never in your control. And it's because we keep on saying that it's second nature for us, right? But for a lot of folks, it's just new information. Like people who they would have never thought about it, right? Like, they have their money in the bank account, and, they don't move into self custody. It stays in the bank account, which is just some figures there. But yeah, what mistakes did you make early on? And you just mentioned some, but what mistakes did you make early on that now you help others avoid, and what made you focus specifically on self custody education?
Yeah, look, I'm super grateful that I was lucky to have a mentor from day one that allowed me to not go into any mistakes like that. But going down the rabbit holes where you learn about FTX, Celsius, these kind of things, that unfortunately you've, by the sounds of it, learnt the hard way to an extent, but not fully destroyed. That's kind of what drives me to continue doing what I'm doing, because I don't want people to have to learn the hard way. I want to educate and make people aware of these issues so that they take action before it's a problem. And I think the curse of the Western world, perhaps, that I think we're perhaps edging close to seeing become a problem is, like you said, a lot of people haven't had that issue of a bank where their money's been frozen yet. We're seeing it more and more with people wanting to exit into Bitcoin, and the banks start blocking their account, and they're like, but it's my money. And actually, no, it's not. But you're right, the exchanges are the same thing as a bank. So if people don't understand what is broken with money and what is broken with the financial system and banks, and it not being your money, leaving your Bitcoin on an exchange is close to the same risk, because sometimes they might not let you withdraw it into self-custody, and into
Mm,
the future that's going to become more and more prevalent. Just like the banks sometimes don't let you transfer money or withdraw cash, it's the same thing. So my outlook on people just getting started is, perhaps it's best not to invest in someone like myself, a Bitcoin Success School, where we'll teach you the skills, and that money's better off being invested in buying more Bitcoin first. But when you reach an amount that you wouldn't like to lose, that's where you need to start looking into self-custody seriously. And you either pay with time or you pay with money. So you can pay
mm,
and learn the skills, and I can take you through step by step. That's what we do at Bitcoin Success School. Or you can go and learn it on YouTube. Now, people pay a lot of the time for the peace of mind because, as you
exactly.
said, it's not necessarily complicated
Mm,
self-custody. It's just a new skill. And the analogy that I often use is, if I gave you, with your child, some car keys to go and drive a car 5 hours down the road, but you'd never driven before, you'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to kill someone. But if I did that now and gave you the keys, you wouldn't even think about it. You'd just go and drive 5 hours. Self-custody is the exact same thing, where yes, you have a lot of responsibility. So if you don't know the skills, that's going to be very, very scary, because you can just lose like
Hmm.
that your life savings if that's what you're doing. But if you learn the skills, you build the setup, the system around it, and then you practice those skills,
Hmm.
it's just a skill. So you can learn that skill, just like the gym, like you talk about. When you put the reps in, you start becoming confident. A squat that might have felt really awkward when you first did a squat, you now do without even thinking. So it's just about putting reps in, building the skill, and obviously learning the skills correctly from the start can help you avoid mistakes going into the future.
Yeah, well said, man. And that's a very valid point. Leaving, as Finn said, if you rather than if you're not comfortable paying someone early on, it's actually you can actually start accumulating sats, and when you reach a certain amount which you cannot afford to lose, or you're not able to sleep thinking about what's going to happen with that, that's when, if you're not able to get the information yourself by spending the time listening to podcasts, reading books, and you're still not confident, it's better to reach out to folks who are actually educating and helping people get their sats, get their Bitcoin into self custody, whether it's single sig, multi sig, setting up your inheritance, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something on you. And everybody who has Bitcoin should be doing that, because I personally believe that all the exchanges, whichever exchange you're using, right, regardless of, I'm not going to name any exchange, but whichever exchange you're using, all of them have a responsibility. They have a fiduciary duty to the government. So tomorrow, if the government says, nope, you are not supposed to, I'm not going to let you send out any transactions from your exchange. You're not allowed to send any transactions out. The exchange will comply. They will have no other option than not to comply with the government. So your funds are frozen there, right? So your exit is actually keeping the keys in your control, taking it into your self custody, right? It's like, what's worse, leaving Bitcoin on an exchange forever or rushing into self custody without understanding what you're doing?
It depends. It's a spectrum, right? Leaving your Bitcoin on an exchange forever is different to leaving your Bitcoin on an exchange. But what I always recommend people do, and again, it depends if you're buying your first little bits of Bitcoin or you're buying multiple Bitcoin in one go to start with. But regardless, you can still go and set up a hot wallet. Not as secure as you want for your long-term savings, of course, but something like Bull Bitcoin I recommend as a hot wallet app, because it's Bitcoin, it's open source. You can also use it as a platform to be able to view your cold storage Bitcoin too. But you can go through that process where you have to back up a hot wallet with a seed phrase. It's obviously not as secure because it's connected to the internet, but you're learning the process. And you don't, let's say someone's come in, they've bought 2 Bitcoin. You don't need to put your 2 Bitcoin into that straight away, but you can learn the skill of backing up a seed phrase, thinking about how you're going to treat that seed phrase, and then sending a small amount of Bitcoin in comparison to your hot wallet that's backed up with a seed phrase. Then you're on that journey. And whether you want to, if you're just dealing with a small amount of Bitcoin, you can then move all of that into your hot wallet. Then you're better off there than if you're leaving it on an exchange. If you've got a big amount, that's obviously where you want to have a more bulletproof self-custody setup than just a hot wallet. But for someone that's just getting started, something like Bull Bitcoin, where you have to get familiar with a seed phrase, is a great starting point, because then you take self-custody, you get used to sending and receiving Bitcoin, and you're off the exchange, which in my opinion is one of the biggest risks when you're buying Bitcoin.
100%. I agree. As those who do not understand that part, I'll break that down. Hot wallet and cold wallet, the only difference is that hot wallet is still under your control, but you're still connected to the internet. So there is still a risk of something infiltrating your personal, your data, your sats, etc. And there could be a chance of that being phished or stolen. wallets. It's completely offline or preferably air gapped, but you could use wallets like Cold Card. I don't know. I personally use Cold Card, but I think there are many others like Foundation or I don't know. There are a few others,
You
right?
want Bitcoin only, open source, and
That's
air
right.
gapped.
That's it. Bitcoin only. So what does that mean is they should not have the functionality of having other crypto assets stored because then that opens up the gateway to, them infiltrating. It should be Bitcoin only, open source, air gap. Perfect. Perfectly said. How do you explain to someone who's completely new, who's really new, who's probably dipped their toes into Bitcoin, but not your keys, not your coins?
You just have to use previous examples of history, FTX, Celsius, all of these, that allows people to see and understand that straight away. The other thing, again, I bring it back into what people are used to and familiar with in terms of a house. So if you've got the key to your house, you're the only one that can get into that house unless someone breaks in, obviously. So it is slightly different. Fundamentally, to get in the front door, you need the key. If you don't have that key, you can't get into your own house. And if someone else has that key, they have access to your house. So it's very similar concept with Bitcoin. If you own the key, you can send Bitcoin to whoever you want without permission. If you don't have the key, someone else is in control of your house, your Bitcoin. From a high level, that's all Bitcoin is. It's something you can send value from A to B without permission, so long as you have it in self-custody. So I try and keep it quite high level using that analogy, and then people typically, especially when they look into previous cases of not your keys, not your coins going wrong, they
Hmm.
pick it up pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is journey. It is a journey, right? Like for someone who's starting, someone who spent a few years and then they learn, they improve. Like for instance, my own example, when I first custodied, I think my first custody was with Ledger. Then I had in Ledger, I had in SafePal, I had in a few Tangem, because I had other assets as well at that point of time. And now it's just Bitcoin only, open source, completely air gapped. And yes, that would be a journey. And if you want to do a very solid security, you have a substantial amount, you want to do it early on. What would you think is a sensible first self custody setup that should look like for an average family?
Obviously, everyone's in a different situation, right? So it's quite hard to throw a blanket over everyone. My general philosophy is you want your setup to be as secure as possible whilst being as least complex as possible for the user. Because in most cases, losses in Bitcoin come from user error as opposed to hacks or scams, so long as you set it up correctly. So what you really want to avoid is treasure maps where you've got seeds in different locations in a really complex multi-sig that you can't remember how to set up. So the way that we help people with Bitcoin Success School is, for example, here's your equipment. This is what you need. It's all Bitcoin open source, air gapped. Get this, once it arrives, we will take you through the entire process from no setup to a really secure setup together live. So you have the peace of mind and reassurance that it's done correctly. Just because you have a secure setup doesn't mean that you're confident in using it. So then in the back end, once we've done the setup, there's a bunch of resources that you can go through at your own time where you develop those skills, because having Bitcoin in self-custody is great, but that's only step one, because if you don't know how to use it, then if you're just stacking, fine. But 3 years down the line, let's say your family member is on the other side of the world and they desperately need you to send some Bitcoin to help them in
Hmm.
a situation. If you've not done that transaction in 3 years,
Yep.
you're going to be like, shit, how do I do this? So to answer your question, you want it as secure as possible while being as least complex as possible. So I like to say as safe as possible, because that
Hmm.
means it's secure, but you're not at risk of user error. But then just keeping the skills top of mind. Similar to
Yeah.
the gym, similar to a car. You check up on them often, because
Yep.
if you just let them decay, it's going to build up rust and then you're going to forget how to use it.
Yeah. Very, very valid point. I would just add to it that from my perspective, like, let's say I have a certain amount of BTC that I do not intend to touch for the next 20 years. I've set up an inheritance plan for my family, my spouse, my partner knows what to do with it if for any reason I'm gone and my daughter gets access to it, etc. That can be set up like that. You can have a complicated setup, but your spouse or partner should be able to know how to get that if you are not there, right? But for something, let's say, for that example that Finn gave, that you for some reason it's an emergency situation, hopefully not, but you want to send those sats, send the BTC to someone, but if you haven't used that model, that multi-sig setup, if you have not transferred or done transactions, or you have set up your keys across the globe, that's going to be a pain. Preferably, you should never photograph that information into your phones, your seed phrases, your key phrases, and obviously that's all what is being taught to you in there, and how to protect your seeds and your key phrases, etc. What is the in your experience when people come to you, what is the biggest self custody mistakes you see from beginners?
I wouldn't say self-custody specifically. I'd say Bitcoin mistake is the number one that happens often, is that people blurt out how much Bitcoin they have.
Man,
And I'm like, whoa, I do not want to know, and I don't need to know that kind of thing.
that's right.
Because everyone's different, right? So
Yeah.
one Bitcoin to someone might be nothing, whereas one Bitcoin to someone else could be life-changing. So often I have conversations with people and they'll spit out, oh, I've got X amount of Bitcoin, I don't know if I need self-custody, which is an interesting concept on its own. But I think people not considering
Mm,
the future value of that Bitcoin. So I don't like measuring Bitcoin in dollars, but I understand most people can conceptualize it better. So you want to think of your Bitcoin today like it's 10x or 100x the value, because it will be that in the future. So you want your self-custody set up to match that it's 10x or 100x today, but also you don't want to tell anyone how much Bitcoin you've got. The answer
mm,
is always not enough if someone asks you, because if it's 10x, 100x the value in the future, who knows what world we're going to see in 10, 20 years. People might be desperate. So
mm,
people will be going through their mind of any way that they can get something. And then it'll be like, oh, Jim told me 10 years ago that he had half a Bitcoin. That's now worth a lot today. I'm going to pay him a
mm,
visit. So
mm.
although today it might not feel substantial, into the future it's going to be a significant amount of purchasing power. So you just want to be really mindful who you're sharing information with. And for example, even I don't want to know and don't need to know anything like that. I just
Okay.
can teach you the setup.
And that is so imperative. It's exactly like, guys, it's a flex that you don't want to do, because you don't tell people or random people how much money you have in your bank account, do you? Or if you do, probably you should not. Same concept. And I get this question quite often, that how much Bitcoin do I need? How much Bitcoin do I need to retire? Or let's say 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line. My simple question is, what are your expenses? What are your annual expenses? How much do you consume? Like, which part of the world are you planning to retire in? Where do you live? So someone's who's living in, let's say, you know, and not in any other way, but let's say somewhere in Asia, where the expenses are probably lower than in Australia. For them, one BTC would be much more than what it would be for someone in Australia. So it depends on your expenses and where you're living. So there are multiple factors there, right? So putting a dollar value to it or any other currency value to it would not make any sense, because it will keep on appreciating against that amount, because the dollar is going to fall, or any other currency is going to fall. Right now, what's happening right now, right? I think the Turkish lira is on the brink of a collapse. Just heard that recently, and we've seen many currencies facing that situation, right? And eventually it will come to the Western nations as well. It's just a matter of time when it will happen. But earlier people understand that Bitcoin is actually the only exit plan that you need, the only retirement fund that you will need, not your superannuation, not your, whatever stocks or indexes you're invested in, but probably, people will come when the media will start pushing it onto them. And that at that point, Bitcoin may be at like 5 million. 10 million, 2 million, who knows, right? And then the angle is like, oh, I don't have that kind of money. But the point is, you never needed that kind of money in the first place. You don't have to buy one BTC. You just can dollar cost average all throughout. It doesn't matter. You don't have to time the market. You don't have to buy it at the top, at the bottom. Just keep on going at it. And eventually, you will see that you have outbeat everything else, right? And guys, this is not a financial advice, something. This is what I have gone through, and most likely Finn has gone through, and we are just sharing our perspective. Obviously, you are in control of your finances. You need to take that decision. You need to do your due diligence, read your books, whatever, listen to podcasts, listen to people who actually know their stuff, and then take that decision. But it's important that setup is important, not just buying, but securing it. And Finn, how often would you recommend someone reviews their Bitcoin security setup?
Just before I answer that, I'll just jump into something you just said there, because
Okay.
I think it's coming and we need to, as Bitcoiners, spread the awareness. We've gone from Bitcoin to scam from the banks and the governments, and we're already now seeing you might want 1 or 2% of Bitcoin. That percentage is going to go up, and the narrative is going to shift to everyone needs some Bitcoin. Everyone needs to get hold of Bitcoin, but self-custody is risky, so we'll custody it for you. Now, it might actually be that at some point into the future, it's not even possible to self-custody your Bitcoin. But in that interim period, there's going to be a lot of noise now that instead of Bitcoin's a scam, that they try and sell self-custody as the scam, that you're going to get hacked, and that's going to be a risk. So I think that's a really big thing to look out for the next 6 to 18 months, is the narrative has now shifted from Bitcoin to scam to everyone needs some Bitcoin, but we'll hold it for you. And that's what we're waiting to see with the banks.
That
got
is
a point. So
sorry, that was a really good one. This, what Finn just said, is so, it's very nuanced, right? This is going to happen, and it's going to happen in such a way, exactly as you said, that Bitcoin will be pushed to the masses. That yes, you need some percentage allocation in your portfolio, but because it's very, it's very dangerous to do it yourself. The seed words, the key phrase, and the internet potential to get scammed, and let us custody for you. And that is the whole point. Right now, I believe, and I could be wrong, but this is what I think, and I don't want it. And I know people will come at me at this. A lot of fanboys will come at me at this, but you know what? This is what I think, and I'm going to put it out. Companies, institutional wrappers who are, what do you call Bitcoin treasury companies, and that's the whole play that's happening right now. I think all of these will eventually be controlled by the government, and then what they're trying to do is they're buying Bitcoin for you and then paying you yield on their assets, right? They are buying the Bitcoin, they're paying you yield. Again, it's better to have that Bitcoin in your custody, especially if you have a long-term mindset. I understand that if you have some kind of a shorter term goal, you want some kind of money, and then people have those kind of plans that, okay, I'll put this money in there for X amount of years and I'll get that yield and I use it for this. Okay. Everyone has a different plan for themselves. They have a different goal, and I get it. It's nothing against that. It's just my personal opinion that if you have to buy, just buy Bitcoin directly and get it into your self custody, because the governments will try their best to try their best so that you don't own any Bitcoin at all. And whatever you have would be owned by them, controlled by them. So you will have paper Bitcoin, essentially, and then you think you have Bitcoin, but one day if you want to do anything with it, you will have to seek their permission. This was the whole point of Bitcoin's creation. Bitcoin was meant to be permissionless. Satoshi's vision was all of us running our own nodes, keeping them into our self-custody. We do not need permission to send. If John needs to send it to Finn, I don't have to ask XYZ for that. I don't need to ask someone else's permission. If I need to pay him, I just need his wallet address and I send him. He says, yeah, John, all good. But I don't need to make a phone call. Hey, I need to transfer 10K. Please release my release my amount, right? And that's happened with me so many times with banking transactions. I have to call and request, no, it's me who is doing this transaction. The money's in my account. I am, with whole sound mind and body, I am actually authorizing this transaction. Oh, we're trying to protect you from scams. No. I am giving you a phone call. I'm telling you, you verified me. I am the same person you've given the account to. It is, and it's so frustrating because they want that level of control. So that was a very nice. That's fine. Yeah. And getting back to that, how often do you think someone should review their Bitcoin security setup?
Yeah. So what I have with my clients is obviously we go through the process of setting everything up, and then it's on them to then go and learn the skills and use the skills. But within that, I have it as a quarterly checkup, and I don't know if in Australia it's the same thing, but in the UK it's called a car MOT, where you take it and get it checked every so often. So I call it a quarterly checkup, but basically a quarterly MOT for your Bitcoin, where you do a test transaction, you do a receive transaction, you wipe your device and you re-import it to make sure that that skill's top of mind. You check your backups that you've created and make sure that everything's where you think it is. And for people listening, the reason you want to do this every quarter and even every month is if something does happen, if your house burns down, or if you think about worst case scenarios, the stress is going to be up here, even if you've been doing these quarterly or monthly checkups. But imagine you haven't. Just imagine you've never restored a device using your seed phrase and your house burns down. That's stressful. Imagine, but you've never done any of that. Imagine that feeling of shit, is my Bitcoin gone forever? If you're doing that skill regularly to the point where you know how to do it, and that's not saying you know it from memory, you might still need a checklist, a step-by-step checklist. But because you've done it regularly, that stress level is going to come down dramatically, because you're like, okay, I've done this before, I just need to do that same process again. So for me, once a quarter is kind of the longest you want to wait, or once a month if you've got the time to set aside. Now, I'm aware that to some people, Bitcoin isn't your everyday, that you're thinking of 24/7 like you and I. But if it's not, then at least once a quarter you want to run through all of those just to make sure that those skills are still top of mind.
Perfect. That's really, that works well. That's like way more than enough, man. 4 times in a year, you're sorted. You're sorted, and it kind of refreshes you, right? It's like it's not a skill that you practice every day. So if you're doing this every day, it's second nature to you. So you probably don't, you exactly know what you want to do. But if it's not, if you just kept it then, you want to forget about it, but you want to revisit that, just so like if you check it 5 years later, you have no idea what happened. And I mean, there will be people who still help you out, but it's good for your peace of mind that you know what you're doing. Bitcoiners often think about sovereignty, but what happens if their family has no idea how to access that Bitcoin? How do you involve your spouse, your partner, or your trusted family members without overwhelming them?
Yeah, look, it's a serious thing to think about. I had a guy called Dale Warburton on my podcast last week, who's
Awesome,
an
man.
Aussie.
I know Dale. He's recently launched the Bitcoin wheel.
Yeah. So he's awesome. I was one of the first to buy his product when it came out. More so to stress test my own setup and also stress test what I've been helping clients with. So we're currently in conversations how we could perhaps make a custom version of that for my clients for them to be able to iterate. But from a high level, I agree with everything Dale's saying. You probably don't want to put that you have Bitcoin or you're passing Bitcoin on in your will, because that's public information. And yes, it probably means that whoever you want the Bitcoin to go to, it will get to them, but that puts a target on their back straight away. So let's say your daughter, I'm going to give all of my Bitcoin to my daughter. Great. But now everyone that's ever seen your will is public information, knows your daughter has Bitcoin.
True.
Are we thinking in 10x, 100x down the line? Do you want people to know your daughter's got that much? So it's about being creative with how that gets allocated to whoever you want it to, but then having a technical roadmap that someone can follow to get access to your Bitcoin. And in best case scenarios, you want someone whilst you're alive to go through that. And maybe instead of once a quarter, that's once a year, that you take that person through the process so that they've still got familiar with your setup, so that if you do die, something happens. Because it's one of those, especially, I was guilty of it. I was like, I'm young, I've got forever to live, I don't need to worry about this thing. But you can,
man. Is that a snarky thing at us older people, bro?
It's not. People just make comments the other way at me, but you want to prepare that you won't wake up tomorrow. And if you don't wake up tomorrow, your Bitcoin doesn't die with you. So it's an important thing to do. But at the
Exactly.
same time, I'm just mindful with how I frame it because I don't want it to
Mm.
scare people off to not get Bitcoin and not get Bitcoin into self-custody.
Excellent, man. Just like yourself, I had also purchased Dale's product the first month when he launched it, but I haven't really initiated it yet. It's still there because that was the exact thought for me. Because for me, it's like, I don't want to disclose this information, right? I have now. This is where I bridge things between having a will, yes, but having an actual Bitcoin inheritance plan. So a proper. So I have. So the mom's aware, and then eventually now, and we've set it up in such a way that if something happens to mom and dad, unfortunately, and hopefully not, but then she gets it when the due time happens, right? And that's important. But it's such a valid point, and and I probably needed to get Dale on board too, as well to have share his thoughts on it. But I think it's an excellent product that he's made. It's something that was missing in the space.
Yeah, 100%. And just to add to that, it's for anyone listening that's like, oh God, not a nice thought. It's not a nice thought, but you want to think for your self-custody setup. And with
Mm,
with Bitcoin brings great power, but that brings great responsibility.
yep.
And a lot of these scenarios we've been talking about are very worst case scenarios, and the chances of them happening are very low, but they're not zero. So anything that's not zero, you want to
Mm,
mitigate as best you can to make it as secure and safe as possible so that that Bitcoin doesn't get lost. So
yep.
yes, a lot of it can be a bit doomery, but once you focus on that for a short period of time and plan for all of the worst case scenarios, then you've got a secure setup so you can sleep well at night and go on with your life as normal.
Absolutely. What should what do you think a non-technical partner or spouse should know at minimum?
Where to find an instruction list.
And where should someone keep that instruction list?
That depends on the individual and their setup. It's going to be different for everyone because there's OPSEC to consider here. So you can't just, again, chuck a blanket on something because then everyone will be like, I'll do that. Or
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
will be like, I know the secrets now. So you want to be mindful with that process. But when I say create or have a process that someone can follow, yes, again, just like when we said when you start self-custody, it seems scary and you think you're going to die or whatever. It's just a set of steps and a set of skills to learn. And if someone can drive a car or they can use mobile banking, they can self-custody Bitcoin. They just need to learn the skills. So it's just the same. If you're giving those instructions to someone, they just need to follow the steps and there's the Bitcoin. However, similar to, say, your house setting on fire, if you've died and you've left your Bitcoin to a partner, let's say, they're already going to be stressed, emotional, distraught that you've died. So the stress is already up here. So by running through that process with them and
Hmm.
then doing it once a year or doing it every 6 months with them makes that situation much easier than if you've never done it and there's a set of instructions that to them is just in a completely different language.
Yeah, I agree with that because there is no how would you I want to put it in an easy way. There like just like in fitness, like there's no one training program that's gonna fit everyone, right? Finn's got a certain body type. Finn's got a certain metabolism. Something works for him. He's probably really strong in his legs, but he needs help in his upper body. But it could be the opposite for someone else. If a program is written for him, if I write a program for Finn, it may not work for John. Same thing, your setup works on your particular situation, right? And that is someone everybody needs to consider while you're setting up your inheritance plan or your, future proofing. Whether you're technical or non-technical, I really compare this through a lot of fitness apparels, right? The security is actually built through reps. Like the more reps you do in any kind of training, you actually build your confidence over a period of time. You may not go to a gym and start lifting, let's say 25, 30 straight up on a certain exercise. You probably start with the lowest weight. And that's a smart thing to do because you want to keep your ego out here. And the same concept is here. You want to keep your ego out. You want to actually practice that part of actually, moving, sending transactions, receiving transactions, backup, recovering, right? And that's a confidence that you want to develop over time. It's the equivalent is equal to a poor form in the gym, which I would like to say, right? And it's more about having less. I mean, it is technical at start. Yes, it will seem technical, but eventually, if it's more about having a process, a structured approach, a process, a roadmap that you have, and then it will feel less technical over time and just about practice. So yeah, I agree. I agree, Finn. Um, if someone, you know, just putting it on a blanket, like, just giving a simple roadmap to someone who's just bought their first small amount of Bitcoin, what should be the next 5 steps that person should do?
Buy more, buy more, buy more, buy more.
Stack sats, guys, like stack sats as if there's nothing else like to do. You know what? Stack sats, keep on stacking sats. And I think I just want to say this because somebody I know, I had introduced them to Amber app. I'm sure you're familiar with Amber app.
Great guys, yeah.
Yeah, awesome team. I personally use Amber every day for my everyday DCA. This friend of mine, and they've used Amber, and they're like, okay, so what shall I do now? Now I've got it. I'm like, you keep stacking. You keep stacking the same way, whatever you've set your auto recurring buys at. Keep doing that. At one point of time, you will reach an amount, and now you think, okay, what
I don't want to
you
lose
want to
this.
do. Yes. And that's when we go to the next step, right? And then obviously, then I, explain the whole process, okay, about hot wallets, cold wallets, hardware wallets, and what to do, moving from the exchange to self-custody, starting with a small test amount, right? Always start with a small test amount. Guys, if you're listening to this and you start doing this yourself, do not transfer your entire stack at one go. You want to send like a couple of bucks. A few cents just to see whether, okay, and then check, verify, oh, yep, I received it. It works, right? The last thing you want is, as Finn mentioned, people lose their Bitcoin because of poor, their own, because of their own, however they treat their assets. If you're not confident and you do something, you send it. Once you send it to a wrong address, it's lost. I mean, I think there are people who probably retrieve it. I don't know, like, people at extreme tech levels, but for me, I think it's gone. It's gone.
Unless it's sent to another exchange, it's gone.
That's right.
Yeah. No, look, to answer your question, it's a joke, but it's also serious at the same time. Without being financial advice, buy more until you get to a point that you wouldn't want to lose it. And that's where you need to look into self-custody. Or throughout the process, you can start looking into self-custody. But it really depends where the person's at when they first buy that small amount. Because if they've already put in a lot of work to understand it, then next steps are perhaps different. But if, like a lot of people, you've just bought Bitcoin for the first time because you've come for number go up, let's say, yes, you want to keep buying, but you need to turn that borrowed conviction from wherever it's borrowed and turn it into your own conviction. And the only way you can do that is by putting in work to understand what Bitcoin is and why it fixes a lot of problems and what problems it fixes. So literally, if all they did was read the 4 books that I can see behind you, the big print Price of Tomorrow, Bitcoin Evangelism, they will start understanding the actual importance of Bitcoin. It's not just this token like all the other cryptos. So that would be my advice, is when you start buying, you need to build that conviction yourself as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Rather than borrowing conviction from someone else.
Well said. Very well said. Borrowed conviction would not stay long, guys, right? It's like motivation, right? Like, there are certain days you are motivated to go to train, to gym, and very normal, we're human. Certain days you have no motivation. The difference is discipline and long-term mindset. You still go and train. And that is the difference between someone who has a long-term conviction, right? You should be thinking about Bitcoin over decades, not months. You should not be worried about, oh my God, it's fluctuating around the 70s. It's going to go to 60. I heard someone, they said it's going to go to 60K. It's going to go to 50K. So if you were someone who bought it at 100K, if bought it at 80K, and you had conviction in it, why would you be afraid if it's at 60K? If I'm in your position, I'll actually load up more at 60K because I'm able to stack more sats cheaper. I'm not going to get this opportunity again, right? Every price level is always taken out by Bitcoin at one point No, it may seem very doom and gloom. For example, right now, the fear and greed index is at like 20 something, if I'm not mistaken. And that's extreme fear. What should you be doing then? You should be buying that fear, right? This is like an age-old concept, right? Even Warren Buffett, who does not like Bitcoin, but he said this all again, you want to buy the fear and sell the greed. It's just the basic psychology. And that's the long-term conviction you want to have in Bitcoin, right? I was talking to someone, I told them, the amount of sats that you have right now is going to overtake your entire portfolio. And even though you have only 5 to 10% of your allocation in Bitcoin, this 5 to 10% will overtake your 90% allocation in your net worth and these other assets. You just need to be patient and give it time. And that's what personally for me rewards patience. It teaches me about patience. And that's a very personal feeling. And as Finn's mentioned, self-custody is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice, right? And again, for people who are waiting for their stack to be really big enough before taking custody seriously, remember, you are still thinking in dollar terms. Your stack may actually be really big for someone else, maybe somewhere, but you got to think in a longer term what that value could possibly be, right? And that's a decision that you need to take.
The other thing, just to jump on that as well, is I've had conversations with clients once they've been set up that perhaps didn't have a lot of Bitcoin before, but by setting up their self-custody, that gives them the confidence to actually deploy more capital into Bitcoin. Because some people are aware of the risks. They're like, I don't want to leave my Bitcoin on an exchange, but I'm too nervous to set up my self-custody on my own.
Yeah.
By making sure that you set up your self-custody properly, not only protects your stack that you might think is not worth much right now, even though it is, just not in dollar terms, but also allow you to feel the confidence to deploy more capital now because you know that it's protected and safe.
Well said. What are the biggest scams that Bitcoin beginners need to avoid?
The psyop of the treasury companies
Good one.
is a big one. And then, look, I'm a massive advocate for AMBRAP as well in Australia, and I use Strike as well in the UK from when I was set up there. I think big scams are crypto exchanges because there's just bright, flashy noise to get distracted in when you don't yet understand what Bitcoin is. So I think that's a massive scam. And I did a video on this yesterday and filmed the road rather than my face by mistake, but I posted it anyway. My thought on the treasury companies is it's taking up a lot of Bitcoiners' time and energy because they're getting frustrated at these treasury companies.
Yeah.
I think that these people are better off letting the treasury companies do their thing and focusing more on the everyday person. Because what opportunity the everyday person currently has is to do what the treasury companies are doing. Look what they're doing, not what they're selling. They are finding any fiat, any dollars that they can and buying Bitcoin with it. And you as an individual can do exactly that right now. My perspective is that these treasury companies are basically opening the floodgates for trapped capital, whatever that even means. And as far as I'm concerned, that can stay trapped capital within the treasury companies. They're not buying Bitcoin. My only issue is the wording of some of their marketing that makes a beginner get psyoped into thinking, oh, this thing's better than Bitcoin. It's not Bitcoin in the slightest. So they're probably the two things. Avoid the treasury companies, let them do their thing with trapped capital, but do what they're doing, not what they're selling. So buy Bitcoin and own the Bitcoin. And number two is crypto exchanges where you'll get dazzles in your eyes and think, oh, this coin's going to be the next Bitcoin. It's not. They're all scams. They're literally all scams.
100%. Stay away from shit coins, kids. Everything else is a scam, right? As Michael Saylor says, there is no second best, or, there cannot be another Bitcoin. Yeah, many have tried to be a Bitcoin in the past. They have hard forked the code and try to be, but we can see where Bitcoin is and where those scam coins are. It's like create somebody coming up tomorrow and saying, "Oh, I've created Internet 2.0, and this is going to be better than the internet that you're using. So let's start using Internet 2.0." Do you think that's going to work? I mean, how much infrastructure is behind the internet, right? Like, so we shut down everything and go to the new thing. So, yes, this is a lot of noise. You want to separate that. Separate yourself from there, right? Separate. These are red flags that you should be looking out online. As you said, exchanges, anybody trying to promise you high, extremely high yields on your Bitcoin, send it to their exchange or whatever, their custody, and they'll pay you monthly dividends or yields on it. All these yield wrappers, definitely they will fall. We have seen it in the past. BlockFi, Celsius, as we mentioned. Even an exchange like FTX, which was almost, I think, the second or third largest at that point of time before it collapsed when Terra Luna happened. So you want to learn about Bitcoin, educate yourself, separate yourself from all this hype, the trading noise, and any kind of influencer marketing. There are a lot of shillers online who will tell you to get this particular thing, or I don't know, Zec or whatever, Monero, or the next fancy item, the next shiny object, right? You separate yourself, think in long term with a long term mindset, right? Finn, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to someone who feels overwhelmed by too much Bitcoin content, right? Like, for example, like, when we make, you and I, when we make, I don't even make that much in amounts to what probably you guys are putting out. But whenever I make, and, do you think people get desensitized to this, or, they like, this guy's constantly talking about it, man. There's nothing about it. Do you think they get overwhelmed by it, or do you think eventually they'll start listening to it or understand, or they only listen to it when the media pushes it out, or when the price is going off the roof and they're like, oh man, Bitcoin. Have you heard about Bitcoin? What do you think?
50% of people are below average. I think we have to remember that as Bitcoiners. So most people aren't going to pay attention. They're just going to
Yeah.
follow the crowd. So
Yeah.
most people will come to Bitcoin when the number has gone up
Yeah.
and when the media, mainstream media, are pushing it in people's faces. By that point, it's too late because you won't be able to self-custody at that point because the narrative will be it's too risky. I think there's not enough everyday people like you and I sharing about Bitcoin, because the more people that are talking about it is the more angles and different ways of articulating what Bitcoin is, why it attracted them, how they see their life differently now. And you never know who's going to resonate with who. So I don't think there's enough voices out there that are Bitcoin only. So Bitcoin only is an important one to differentiate on. If people are talking about shitcoins or talking about treasury companies, just focus on the Bitcoiners and you'll find that there's a lot less overwhelm there, because it's just very based information and probably about more things than Bitcoin. Like you, for example, you're talking about the health. Just had a podcast with someone talking about homeschooling their kids. It's much more grounded and much less hypey and overwhelming. The other thing is, depending where you are on your journey, if you understand Bitcoin and you've built that conviction up, of course, there's a million rabbit holes you can continuously keep going down.
Yeah.
But you've sorted the money thing in your life. So you can now focus on everything else except your savings, because that's sorted. So you can focus more on family, focus more on your health, focus more on your wealth. You can go and provide value to the world in whatever way you want to, whether it's a job or whether it's a business. Provide as much value to the world, get returned for that value, and you just have to save in Bitcoin. So you don't even need to keep spending 12 hours a day thinking about Bitcoin. You know it's there, it's doing its thing, and you can go out and enjoy the world. Because the other thing is, it's easy sometimes subconsciously to get into a bit of a rut or a dark headspace about the future. Bitcoin obviously helps that. But when you start seeing how the world works, you're like, damn, this is a bit dark.
Yeah.
Go outside, touch grass. It's a cliche saying, but go outside, train, go on a run.
Yeah.
Spend time with your family and just go out and enjoy life for what it is, because you know with Bitcoin you're protected no matter what happens into the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely, guys, right? It doesn't have to be, I talk about that kind of training, but it doesn't have to be that. You can go out and run with your kids, or run alone, or you can just go cycling, swimming, whatever. But you have to take that decision before you're forced to take that decision, right? You reach at a stage in your life where you are recommended by clinicians that, okay, you need to do these sort of exercises for you to, you know, live further or to improve your health. But why not work towards it, right? You working your entire life, spending your time and energy to earn money, and then you send that money to fix your health at a later stage rather than work on your health and, you know, put some effort into learning about the hardest money, the most sound money on planet Earth, and, future proof your life and your future generations. Finn, before we close, and I know we slightly got above time, before we close, just want to know, I know you've given a synopsis, an idea, but what are you building with Bitcoin Business School? And is it yourself or you have a team or yeah, who is the best person who's the person that you're best positioned to help? And yeah, just about that.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. Really enjoyed it. So we've had massive growth in the last 6 months. About 95% of our clients are Australians, and they're
Nice.
either holding Bitcoin on an exchange and know that they need to self-custody their Bitcoin but haven't yet taken the plunge, or a lot of people are setting up SMSFs, self-managed super funds, and want to get it set up right away because obviously you
Hmm.
have
Hmm.
audits and you don't want to mess around with getting that wrong. So that's kind of my two clients that I predominantly help. And then in terms of a team, it's just me at the moment. I've currently got two guys that I'm kind of training in the background because I'm at this awkward stage where I can deliver on my clients, but it means that I'm working like 15-hour days. So my partner's not my best friend at the moment. She's like, you work 24/7. So I'm building up two guys that are familiar with the process. I'm just making sure that it's bang on because it's a high trust space. So I don't want to just give someone reins when they're not there because they need to build up that trust. So at the moment, it's just me on my own, but two people very soon, hopefully joining the team to take that workload, but also allow us to increase our scope and be able to serve more people so that I'm not the bottleneck. Because ultimately, the reason I started was because there's so many people that are one step away from something going wrong.
Hmm.
So I don't want to be the limiting factor here for not helping more people.
Hmm.
So I just need to make sure that the staff that we're bringing on are high integrity, high trust, and can provide high value to the clients as well.
Beautiful. Amazing, man. Great job. You're doing a great job. And rightfully so. We need more Bitcoiners in the space actually having their podcast and spreading the message as much as they could. For me, personally, it was it's a very new channel for me, just created on in November. But why I came across it because I've been in this fitness space for a while, and one day randomly I just went across the gym right with a little mic and a thing, and just asking and people from different age groups, right, from someone in the late teens, 19, 20ish, to someone in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So it was not limited to a bracket. And then I just asked basic questions about what their understanding on money is. Do they understand inflation? Have you heard about Bitcoin? And stuff like that, right? And that was like, I'd never went past Bitcoin because the answers that I got even before that was just mind bending. People had no idea at all on the most basic concepts of things, right? And that's when I realized that, okay, we probably have, and our journeys, our individual journeys over time, and our understanding of the concepts are much more different. And we need to probably spread this education and help more people take control of their, hard-earned wealth, which they could actually protect. You could protect that wealth rather than that depreciating into something which becomes worthless after a few years. A simple concept as why does your $100 does not buy you the same things that it bought you in 2015 or 2020? Why don't you get the same groceries when you grow up? But you complain, or tell other your friends and families, oh my God, this is so expensive. Last time I went, I spent $100. I only got this much. But do you understand why that happened? The answer is not that the things of prices are rising up. Oh, that's just how it is. That's the most common response I get. Oh, it's just how it is. Things of price go up. No. In today's world, when everything is, technology is rapidly increasing at this page, at this pace, everything should be we should be getting things cheaper. But it's the flip side. Why your money is losing value? And that's what we're trying to do. So yeah, the more, awareness we could give, so that would be awesome. So you're doing something really awesome. Is there any other socials that you use, Insta or Nostr or
Yeah,
TikTok?
I'm actually more active on Instagram than I am on X.
Sweet.
So same handle, it's at Finn Creighton on all social media platforms. And then if anyone's listening and interested in just having a conversation about self-custody, then they can go to bitcoinsuccessschool.com, and the
Right.
first 30 minutes is free for a clarity call on your situation and to see if it's right for you or not.
You heard it, guys. So 30-minute free consultation call, and from there you can decide what do you want to do with it. So that is excellent. This was really wonderful, brother. I really enjoyed our conversation, and hopefully we could have much more in the future. I do intend to get sometime down the line a few guys together, someone like and then have like a bridge between. Like someone like Dale, for example, and yourself, and mold things around so it's much more easier, right? We need to. I think the angle that I'm trying to do is like get things as easier for people to understand rather than using complicated jargons and technical jargons like self custody, seed phrases, key phrases, passwords, and it seems very scary. It's a bit intimidating for someone new, right? It's similar to someone walks to the gym and you see these massive dudes, or the girls with super gains, and then you get intimidated on the first day. Oh my god, like dude, what am I going to do here, right? And that's the journey, right? You want to make it easy, and those people will be really helpful. And my experience is like most of them are really helpful because they've actually gone through that journey. They're actually the sweetest people, guys. Have a look at the website. I'll post the website link as well for Bitcoin Business School. And then, yeah, take it from there. So, Finn, thank you once again, bro, for coming over to my channel. And we will reconnect sometime again in the future. And you have an amazing week ahead. And again,
Thanks, man.
as we say on this channel, stack sats, build strength, and own your life. So, take care, brother.